Raylos had never known fear. His people, the Vishan, believed they had moved beyond such primitive feelings long ago. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. They watched. They studied. They did not feel. For 40 cycles, Raylos had worked as a diplomat on Kevin 7, a space station floating at the edge of dangerous territory. He had seen many terrible things in his time there. He had watched the Marathi war fleets burn entire planets. He had seen the Bryn sell living beings like objects. He had studied reports of the Hollow, a hive mind of monsters that ate worlds and everything on them. None of it had touched him. He observed. He recorded. He remained calm. Then the humans came. Their ship arrived damaged and smoking, barely holding together. 3 of them walked off the vessel and into the station. Raylos watched them from across the docking bay. Curious about this species he had only read about in reports. The first was a small woman named Una Park. She moved with the careful steps of someone who had seen much violence. Her hands were covered in old scars, but her eyes were strangely calm. She carried herself like a captain, and the others followed her without question. The second was a large man called Deho Kang. He was broad and strong, with a smile that never seemed to leave his face. Even with blood on his uniform and burns on his arms, he was laughing at something his companion said. The third was Myra Beek. She was harder to notice, which seemed to be her intention. She moved through the docking bay like smoke, her eyes touching everything, missing nothing. She looked soft and gentle, but Raylos saw how she positioned herself to watch every door. They were refugees, they explained. A border fight had destroyed their fleet. They needed shelter while they repaired their ship. Raylos was assigned to observe them. It was easy work. Humans were not complicated, he thought. They were young in the galaxy, barely a few centuries into space travel. What could they possibly show him that he had not already seen? Everything, as it turned out. He watched them in the common areas of the station. They were loud. They laughed at jokes that made no sense to him. They touched each other constantly, hands on shoulders, arms around backs, fingers brushing fingers. They shared food from the same plates, even when they had enough for everyone to eat alone. They spoke of their dead. This fascinated Raylos most of all. The Veshan did not discuss those who had passed. Death was an ending, nothing more. But the humans spoke of their fallen friends by name. They told stories about them. They laughed at memories and sometimes cried at them too. Captain Park told her crew about a man named Jinho who had died in the battle. She described how he had always burned his food and sang badly and loved his daughter more than anything in the universe. Her voice was thick with grief, but also with something else. Pride, Raylos realized. She was proud of this dead man. Lieutenant Kang raised a cup of water. The others did the same. They drank together in silence. And somehow this simple act seemed more powerful than any ceremony Raylos had ever witnessed. He did not understand. He filed it away for a later study. 1 week into their stay, a Marathi patrol ship arrived at Kevin 7. The Marathi were massive creatures, covered in natural armor, built for war and cruelty. Their commanders strode into the station and demanded an audience with the station master. Raylos was present when the Marathi saw the humans. The commander's eyes fixed on Captain Park with sudden interest. Raylos knew that look. The Marathi collected rare species. They kept them as slaves, as entertainment, as food. Humans were rare enough to be valuable. The commander stepped forward, towering over the small human woman. His voice was like stones grinding together. He demanded that the humans be surrendered to him. They were trespassers in Marathi space. They belonged to him now. Raylos expected negotiation. He expected Park to bargain, to offer something in exchange for safety. That was how the galaxy worked. Everything had a price. Everyone could be bought. Park looked up at the creature 3 times her size. Her scarred hands hung loose at her sides. Her eyes remained calm. She said one word. No. The Marathi commander went very still. Around him, his soldiers shifted, weapons ready. The tension in the room became thick enough to taste. The commander tilted his armored head. He seemed genuinely confused. He asked if Park understood what she was saying. Her ship was broken. Her crew was small. She had no weapons, no allies, no hope. She would die for damaged soldiers with no strategic value. Park's voice did not change. They are my people. That is all the value they need. Relos felt something move through him. It was cold and strange, starting in his chest and spreading outward. His 4 hands trembled slightly. His breathing changed. He did not recognize the feeling. He had never experienced it before. Behind Park, Lieutenant Kang was still smiling, but the expression had transformed into something else entirely. His eyes had gone flat and empty, like windows into a dark room. Mirabik had positioned herself at the edge of Rayles's vision, and he suddenly realized he had lost track of her hands. The Marathi commander stared at Park for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter, turned, and left with his soldiers. He did not look back. Park watched him go. Her expression never changed. Raylo stood frozen in place, trying to understand what had happened. The humans had no power here. They had nothing. And yet they had won. That night, alone in his quarters, Relos finally identified the feeling that had moved through him. It took hours of research, searching through emotional databases his people had not used in centuries. Fear. He had felt the first, distant touch of fear, not of the Marathi, not of death or violence. He was afraid of the humans. He did not know why. He only knew that something in him had recognized something in them. Something old. Something dangerous. Something that smiled while the universe burned around it. Relos did not sleep that night. He sat by his window, watching the stars, and waited for the feeling to pass. It did not pass. It grew. The hollow came without warning. Relos was in the medical bay when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The station shook like a living thing in pain. Through the windows, he saw it happen. Space itself tore open like a wound, and darkness poured through. The hollow was not one creature. It was millions, billions, a tide of living nightmares connected by a single hungry mind. Each drone was a horror of black chitin and bladed limbs, eyeless heads and mouths that never stopped moving. They existed only to feed, to grow, to spread. Entire civilizations had fallen to them. Entire species had been erased from existence. And now they were here. Relos ran. He was not ashamed of this. Running was logical. The station had no military. It was a place for diplomats and traders, not warriors. There was nothing to do but flee. The Marathi had the same idea. Their patrol ship was already pulling away from the station, engines burning bright. The Bryn had sealed themselves inside their vessels, calculating survival odds, deciding if rescue was worth the risk. The answer, apparently, was no. Their ships departed one by one. Relos found himself in a corridor near the docking bay. His chest hurt from running. His 4 hands shook as he tried to open a door that would not respond. Behind him, he heard the sounds of the hollow eating through metal, through walls, through screaming bodies. Then he heard something else. Footsteps. Human footsteps. Captain Park and Lieutenant Kang came around the corner at a run. They were not fleeing. They were hunting. Park held a pistol in one hand and a long knife in the other. Kang carried a rifle that looked too big for normal use, and he was checking the ammunition with practiced fingers. They saw Relos. They did not slow down. Park grabbed his arm with her free hand and pulled him along. Stay with us. Her voice was calm, as if the world was not ending around them. "Stay close and stay behind." Raylos wanted to ask where they were going. He wanted to tell them this was pointless, that they should find an escape pod, that fighting the Hollow was impossible. But there was no time for words. The corridor behind them filled with darkness and clicking sounds and the smell of something rotten. The Hollow had found them. Kang turned first. His rifle came up in one smooth motion and started firing. The sound was enormous in the enclosed space. Raylos saw hollow drones exploding, pieces of chitin spraying across the walls. But for every one that fell, 3 more took its place. Park pushed Raylos against the wall. She said one word, "Watch." Then she moved forward, and Raylos saw something he would never forget. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like something older, something more primal. Kang stood like a wall, his rifle never stopping, absorbing shots that would have killed Raylos instantly. A blade caught his shoulder and opened it to the bone. He did not fall. He did not scream. He shifted his weight, fired 3 more shots, and kept going. Park was worse. She moved through the hollow like water through stone, finding gaps, exploiting weaknesses. A knife found the joints in their armor, the soft places in their bodies. When a drone grabbed her arm, she broke its grip with her forehead and kept cutting. When her knife got stuck in a body, she used her hands. Raylos watched her punch through chitin with her bare fists, watched her teeth find an enemy's throat. When her hands were occupied, they were laughing, not the cruel laughter of the Marathi, who enjoyed suffering. This was different. This was wild, alive, desperate. Between kills, they called to each other. Kang shouted that he was getting tired. Park told him to stop being lazy. Kang laughed and said she was one to talk. She was covered in blood. Park said most of it was not hers. Kang said that was not as comforting as she thought. The hollow kept coming. The humans kept killing. The corridor became a place of death, thick with bodies and the smell of burning and the sounds of violence. Raylos pressed himself against the wall and watched. He could not move. He could not think. He could only observe, as he had been trained to do. He saw Kang take 17 wounds. He counted them. 17 times the blades found flesh, and 17 times the big man stayed on his feet. His smile never faded. His eyes never changed. He was not enjoying the pain. He was simply refusing to acknowledge it. He saw Park lose 2 fingers. A hollow blade took them clean off. She looked at her hand for 1 second, made a sound of annoyance, and kept fighting. Later, Raylos would learn that she had tied off the wounds herself, using strips of her own uniform while still giving orders. The battle lasted 3 hours. Raylos knew this because he watched the time display on the wall, unable to look away. 3 hours of constant violence, constant death, constant impossible survival. When reinforcements finally arrived, human soldiers from a passing ship that had heard the distress call, they found Park and Kang still standing. The corridor behind them was filled with hollow dead, piled so high that movement was difficult. Kang finally sat down. His legs gave out, and he dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Mirabeek appeared from somewhere, her clothes covered in blood, and caught him before he hit the ground. Park remained standing. She would not sit until every survivor was found. She would not rest until every body was recovered. She walked through the ruined station on legs that should not have been able to carry her, and she did not stop. Raylos followed her. He did not know why. He only knew that he could not look away. A young human soldier approached him. The soldier was crying, tears running down his face, but his hands were steady on his weapon. He asked if Raylos was hurt. He offered water, food, medical attention. Raylos took the water. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The soldier put a hand on his shoulder. "It will be okay. the soldier said. "You are with us now." Ralos looked at the bodies of the hollow. He looked at the wounded humans being carried to safety. He looked at Captain Park, still walking, still searching, still refusing to stop. He understood fear now. He understood it completely. He was not afraid of the hollow. The hollow were just monsters. Monsters could be understood. He was afraid of the humans, because they were monsters too. But they were monsters who wept for strangers, who laughed in the dark, who refused to die when death was the only logical choice. He was afraid because he had seen what lived inside them. And he knew, with terrible certainty, that he would never be able to forget it. The ship was called Endurance. It was a human vessel, old and worn, with walls that groaned when it moved and lights that flickered when the engines worked too hard. It carried the survivors of Kevin 7 toward human space, a journey of many weeks through empty darkness. Ralos had nowhere else to go. His people had not responded to his messages. The Vishan did not involve themselves in wars, and the hollow attack had made the region too dangerous for diplomats. So he stayed with the humans, watching them, trying to understand. The ship was crowded. There were not enough beds, not enough food, not enough medicine. The humans shared everything. They slept in shifts, giving their beds to those who needed rest more. They divided their rations equally, even when some had worked harder than others. They treated wounds with careful hands and gentle words. Ralos had expected the violence he had witnessed to define them. He had expected cold warriors, hard and empty. What he found was something else entirely. Mirabik had been a teacher before the war. She showed Ralos pictures on a small device she carried everywhere. The pictures showed young humans with bright eyes and wide smiles, standing in front of a building filled with books. She spoke of them with a softness that seemed impossible from someone who had killed so efficiently during the attack. She told him their names. Sujin, who loved to paint. Taman, who asked too many questions. Jaiwan, who was afraid of the dark but pretended not to be. She did not know if they were alive. She sent messages every day, hoping for answers that never came. Lieutenant Kang was recovering slowly from his wounds. The doctors had told him to stay in bed. Instead, he walked the corridors every night, checking on the other survivors, telling jokes that made them laugh even when they did not want to. His sister lived on a distant planet, too far to reach by direct communication. He recorded messages for her anyway, one every day. Ralos asked him why. The messages would take months to arrive. By then, everything might be different. Kang smiled his endless smile. She worries about me, he said. This way, when the messages arrive, she will know I was thinking of her. She will know that even out here, in the dark, I carried her with me. Captain Park did not sleep. Ralos watched her walk the ship at night, her footsteps quiet, her eyes checking every door and counting every head. She knew the name of everyone on the ship. She knew their injuries, their fears, their stories. One night, Ralos found the courage to ask her why she pushed herself so hard. Park stopped walking. She leaned against the wall and looked at something far away, something Ralos could not see. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. She told him about a mission years ago. A small fight on a small planet that should have meant nothing. She had been tired. She had made mistakes. 3 soldiers under her command had died because she was not paying attention. She still saw their faces when she closed her eyes. She still heard their voices calling for help that came too late. She still carried their names carved into her heart like wounds that would never heal. Ralos asked if she blamed herself. Park looked at him with those calm, scarred eyes. Who else should I blame? They were mine. The word stayed with Ralos long after Park walked away. Mine, not her soldiers, not her subordinates, not her responsibility. Her people, hers. He began to understand something about humans. They did not fight for ideas or strategies or calculated benefits. They fought for each other. Every human was a territory to defend, a treasure to protect, a reason to stand when standing was impossible. The Hollow found them twice during the journey. The first time, an alarm woke Raylos in the middle of the night cycle. He ran to the observation deck and saw the dark shapes moving toward them through space. His heart pounded in his chest. His hands trembled. The humans were already moving. They did not panic. They did not argue. They armed themselves and took positions with the smoothness of long practice. Kang was there despite his wounds, rifle in hand, smile on his face. Mira was there, quiet and deadly. Her gentle teacher's hand wrapped around a weapon. Park stood at the center, giving orders in a voice that never wavered. Raylos watched their faces as the Hollow approached. He saw something he had missed before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Myra's hands trembled before she steadied them. Kang's smile was tight at the corners, held in place by will alone. Park's jaw was clenched so hard Raylos could see the muscles straining. They were terrified, and they fought anyway. The second attack was worse. The Hollow breached the hull, and the fighting moved inside the ship. Raylos found himself holding a weapon he did not know how to use, standing beside humans who treated him like one of their own. A young soldier named Jae-sung pushed him behind cover when the drones came. Jae-sung was barely old enough to be called a man, his face still soft with youth. He was shaking with fear, his breath coming in short gasps, but he stood in front of Raylos and fired at the Hollow until his weapon ran empty. Then he picked up a piece of broken metal and kept fighting. Later, when the attack was over, Raylos found Jae-sung sitting alone in a corner. The young man was crying, his body shaking with sobs he could not control. Raylos sat beside him and said nothing. After a long time, Jae-sung spoke. He said he was scared. He said he was always scared, every time, and it never got easier. He said he sometimes wished he could run away and never fight again. Raylos asked why he kept fighting. Jae-sung wiped his eyes with dirty hands. He looked at Raylos with something like confusion, as if the question made no sense. Because they need me, he said. How could I leave them? Raylos thought about this for days. Fear was just information. Park had told him once. It told you something mattered. It told you to pay attention. The humans felt fear. They felt it deeply, constantly, painfully. But they did not obey it. They used it. They transformed it into something else, something that burned instead of froze, something that pushed them forward instead of holding them back. By the time endurance reached the edge of human space, Raylos had changed. He did not feel safe anymore. He did not feel distant. He felt afraid. Afraid and grateful and confused and alive. He was beginning to understand why. The distress signal reached them 3 days before they were supposed to reach safety. It came from a colony world called Hound 4, a farming planet with green fields and small towns and 30,000 people who had never held a weapon in their lives. The Hollow had found them. Raylos stood on the bridge of the Endurance and watched the planet burning below. Smoke rose from 100 locations. Even from orbit, he could see the dark tide moving across the surface, consuming everything in its path. The communications were filled with screaming, with crying, with desperate prayers in languages Raylos did not understand. The Endurance carried 47 humans. They were wounded, tired, low on ammunition, far from help. Against them stood an army of thousands, perhaps millions, of hollow drones. Raylos calculated the odds. They were not odds at all. They were certainty. Going down to that planet meant death. Captain Park stood at the center of the bridge, looking at the burning world below. Her face was calm, but Raylos had learned to read her now. He saw the tension in her shoulders. He saw the weight in her eyes. She turned to her crew. "We are going down." Raylo spoke before he could stop himself. "That is suicide. You cannot save them. The mathematics do not allow it." Park looked at him. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "I know." She turned back to the planet. She gave orders in a steady voice, organizing the descent, assigning positions, preparing for the battle to come. Around her, the humans moved with quiet purpose. No one argued. No one refused. Kang appeared beside Raylos. His wounds had not fully healed. He should have been in bed. Instead, he was checking his rifle with practiced hands, that endless smile on his face. Raylos asked him why. Why go down there? Why die for strangers? Kang was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Raylos would remember for the rest of his life. "My grandmother used to tell me stories when I was young. She said that humans are not special because we are strong. We are not special because we are smart. We are special because we do not know how to give up." He paused, his smile fading into something more serious. "Those people down there are screaming for help. If we fly away, who will answer them?" The descent was rough. Hollow flyers attacked them on the way down, and the ship shook with impacts. Raylos strapped himself in and watched the humans prepare for combat. Their faces were pale. Their hands were steady. Myra sat across from him. She was holding her weapon like it was something precious and terrible at the same time. Her eyes met his. "Stay close to me," she said. "I will keep you safe." Raylos wanted to tell her that he was not worth protecting. He was not a fighter. He was not brave. He was just an observer who had stumbled into something far beyond his understanding. But Mira just smiled, a soft expression that reminded him of the teacher she had been, and turned away to prepare. The battle for Hound 4 lasted 4 days. Raylos fought. He did not know how else to describe it. He was given a weapon and told where to point it, and he pulled the trigger until his arms ached and his eyes blurred. He was not good at it. He was slow and clumsy and afraid every single moment. The humans carried him anyway. They formed lines with broken equipment and farming tools. They built walls from wreckage and bodies. They pulled civilians from burning buildings and went back for more, again and again, until the buildings collapsed behind them. Raylos watched a woman named Yumbi carry 3 children across an open field while hollow drones fired at her from all directions. She was hit twice. She kept running. She delivered the children to safety and collapsed. And the medics worked on her for an hour before her heart started beating again. He watched a man named Sangwoo stand alone at a broken gate, holding back the hollow with nothing but a metal bar and his own body. He fought until his arms stopped working. Then he used his legs. Then he used his weight, throwing himself at the enemy again and again until help arrived. On the 3rd day, Lieutenant Kang took a wound that opened his chest to the bone. Raylos was there when it happened. A hollow blade found the gap in Kang's armor and cut deep. Blood poured out in a terrible flood. Kang fell, and for one horrible moment, Raylos thought it was over. Mira was there instantly, dragging him to cover, screaming his name. Her hands pressed against the wound, trying to hold the blood inside. Her face was wet with tears. Kang opened his eyes. His smile was gone, replaced by something else. Pain, yes, but also determination. A refusal to accept what was happening. He looked at his ruined chest. He looked at Myra. His voice was barely a whisper. "Still got one good arm. Give me a gun." They gave him a gun. He killed 37 more hollow before he lost consciousness. Raylos counted. On the 4th day, the sky filled with fire. Human ships, dozens of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with weapons already blazing. Military vessels and civilian craft, cargo ships with welded-on guns, and pleasure yachts carrying soldiers. They had heard the distress call. They had come from everywhere, dropping whatever they were doing. crossing vast distances for the sake of strangers they had never met. They fell on the hollow like a storm. Raylos stood in the ruins of a town he did not know the name of and watched the sky burn. Around him, human soldiers were landing, fresh and ready to fight. They did not know him. They had never seen him before, but they treated him like family. One of them, a tall woman with kind eyes, wrapped his wounds with gentle hands. She called him brother. She shared her water with him. She asked if he was okay. Raylos did not know how to answer. He looked at the battlefield, at the bodies of humans and hollow mixed together, at the smoke rising into the strange sky. He thought about Kang, somewhere behind the lines, fighting death as stubbornly as he had fought the enemy. He thought about Park, still giving orders, still refusing to stop. He thought about Myra and Sangwoo and Yoonbi and Jaesung, and all the others who'd stood in the dark and refused to move. He understood fear now. He understood it completely, and he understood something else. Something that would change him forever. He was not just afraid of the humans anymore. He was proud to stand beside them. 1 year later, Raylos stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from 100 species. The Marathi sat in their armored thrones, massive and cold. The Bryn calculated and watched from the shadows. Dozens of other races, some Raylos knew and some he did not, waited to hear what he had to say. Behind him stood a delegation of humans. Captain Park was there. She was Admiral Park now, her uniform covered in medals she never looked at. The scars on her hands had faded but not disappeared. Her eyes were the same as always, calm and deep and carrying weights that only she could see. Lieutenant Kang was there. He walked with a cane now, his chest still healing, but that smile had never left his face. He had refused to stay behind. He said he wanted to see Raylos speak. Myra Beek was there. She had adopted 3 orphans from Hound 4, children who had lost everything in the attack. She called them her family now. She was teaching them to read, to paint, to ask too many questions. Raylos looked at them and felt the fear that had become his constant companion. It was not the cold fear of his people, the distant calculation of risk. It was warm and alive. It reminded him of everything that mattered. He turned to face the council. The Marathi representative spoke first. His voice was full of contempt. He asked why they should listen to Raylos, a Veshan who had abandoned his own kind to walk with animals. He asked why they should consider alliance with humans, a species barely out of their caves, primitive and violent and without reason. Raylos let him finish. Then he stepped forward. He told them that he had been like them once, distant, superior, watching the universe from above, never touching it, never being touched. He had believed that fear was weakness, that emotion was primitive, that the cold logic of survival was the highest truth. Then he met the humans. He told them about Kevin 7, about a small woman who said no to creatures twice her size, about a man who smiled while his body was torn apart, about a fight in a corridor that should have ended in death but ended in victory because the humans simply refused to lose. He told them about the endurance, about messages sent to sisters who would not receive them for months, about teachers who became warriors and warriors who wept for children they had never met, about fear that never went away but never won. He told them about Hound 4, about 47 wounded, tired soldiers who flew into certain death to save strangers, about a man who asked for a gun when his chest was open to the bone, about a sky filled with ships that came from everywhere, called by nothing but the sound of screaming. The council was silent. Even the Marathi had stopped moving. Raylos looked at them with eyes that had seen too much and understood too little. "I am not here to argue for alliance," he said. "I am here to warn you." He paused, letting the words settle. "The hollow will come for us all eventually. This is not speculation. This is certainty. They are hunger without end, destruction without purpose. They will eat every world, consume every species, erase every memory of everything we have ever been. When that day comes, you will have a choice. Stand with humanity, or stand against them. Stand with creatures who fight without hope and win anyway, or stand alone and fall. I have made my choice. He turned to look at the humans behind him. Park nodded once. Kang smiled. Mira watched with those gentle eyes that had seen so much violence. I have felt what it is to fight beside beings who turn terror into fuel. Raylos continued. I have seen them transform desperation into defiance, weakness into strength, fear into something that burns instead of freezes. He faced the council again. His voice was stronger now, filled with something he had never felt before. Conviction. The hollow is hunger without thought. The Moradi are cruelty without consequence. But humans are fear itself given form. Not fear that makes you run. Fear that makes you stand. Fear that says this matters. This is mine, and you will not have it while I breathe. Raylo smiled. It was a human expression, one he had learned from watching them. It felt strange on his face, but also right. Terror touched me at last when I fought shoulder to shoulder with mankind. And I have never felt more alive. The council chamber erupted in noise. Arguments, questions, accusations. The Moradi protested. The Bryn calculated new odds. A dozen species debated what they had heard. Raylos did not care. He walked back to stand with the humans, and Kang put a hand on his shoulder. And Mira smiled at him with tears in her eyes. And Park just nodded as if he had done exactly what she expected. The war against the Hollow lasted 7 more years. It was terrible beyond description. Worlds burned. Species fell. The darkness seemed endless, but the humans led the charge as they always did. They died in numbers that should have broken them and kept coming. They laughed in the dark places, sang songs in the trenches, and carried their dead home when they could. Admiral Park fell at the Battle of the Breach, holding the line while civilian ships escaped. She stood alone at the end, surrounded by Hollow, and she was still fighting when the fire took her. Lieutenant Kang took her place. He led the final assault that drove the Hollow back into the void. He was carried off the battlefield on a stretcher, still smiling, still giving orders. Mirabeek raised her children on stories of their aunt and uncle, their family that stretched across species and stars. She taught them that fear was not weakness. She taught them that courage was not the absence of terror, but the decision to stand anyway. Raylos lived to see the galaxy united by bonds forged in human fire. He wrote his memoirs in his final years, trying to explain what he had witnessed to those who came after. The last line read, "I spent my life believing fear was weakness. Then I met humanity and learned that fear is simply love wearing armor on distant worlds, in languages Raylos would never hear. Humans read those words and not a dot they understood. They'd always understood.